again, everyone. Welcome to episode 3. As you can tell, we are going to start our video with talking about these gopher tortoises. How beautiful is this little girl? You can tell male and female tortoises sometimes from the shape of their shell, or you can go by the length of their tail. Females have a short, stubby tail, whereas males have a longer one. Now, these gopher tortoises are a threatened and endangered species, but they are all over Bowditch Point on Fort Myers Beach. Unlike turtles, tortoises are herbivores and they spend their time on land. Please, if you see one of these little guys, do not touch it or help it unless it's on the road. Then put it in the same direction it was going. You can see this little tortoise is getting all these little sea grapes, picking them up. Now, we try to stay about 3 feet from them on our tours, but if they come up to us, then we just don't touch them, and I do try to keep the kids back a little further. These tortoises can live up to 80 years. They have an amazing sense of smell, and as you can see, they don't really care too much about people if they're in public parks like this. And you can see me talking there with my hands, probably like I'm doing right now while I'm doing the voiceover. She's going right through everybody. That is so cool. We got very lucky seeing this little tortoise. I was trying to get that lady to step back, but she wouldn't look at me. How cool. You can see the sand on their back. They are a burrower. They're a keystone species. Their burrows can go over 50 feet, and they allow other animals to live in there, like the burrowing owls and all kinds of different creatures that are very important. Next animal we came across was a 6-line skink. There's also a 5-line skink I've heard of, but I don't know how to tell them apart. Both have all these lateral lines going down their body, and sometimes they'll have a blue tail. They can also be known as a blue-tailed skink. They are insectivores. You can see really clearly the nostril, the eye, and that little hole on the side of the head. That's the ear. Now, just like a lot of other reptiles, they do sense their environment with their tongue. They don't have as a developed Jacobson organ as some snakes do, and that's used for smelling the air, but they still can see what's going on very well. Next animal I found, this is a beautiful Cuban tree frog. Now, the Cuban tree frogs are an invasive species, and they are taking a lot of habitat and homes from native frogs, but I just couldn't bring myself to do any harm to this little guy, so I captured it after it jumped out and scared the heck out of this poor old lady. But here goes slow motion jump to freedom. You'll see these little lizards running all over property and all over Florida for that matter. They're in another invasive species. This is the Cuban Anole. The Cuban brown anole to be exact. These little guys are insectivores, and just like pretty much all other reptiles, they are cold-blooded. That doesn't mean they necessarily have cold blood. That just means that they are the temperature of the environment around them. Really cool about these guys, they can drop their tail like a lot of lizards to get away from predators, and that tail will still wiggle after it falls from the body, and that hopefully will distract the predator while the head and body can get away. Cute little lizard there. I still love them even if they are invasive. Speaking of predators, this is an American alligator. Sometimes they are found on the island. Not all the time because they are not saltwater tolerant. But they will find their way out there occasionally, and they will be very, very surprised when they realize that pretty much all the water on Fort Myers Beach and on the barrier islands is all saltwater. So they will usually find their way back to the mainland. But this is an absolutely gorgeous alligator. They have one of the strongest bite strengths in the world. They have a bite strength stronger than crocodiles, but they are not as aggressive. Very beautiful. See that U-shaped mouth instead of the V like a crocodile would have. I want to talk about a couple more shorebirds that we see frequently. This one here is a ruddy turnstone, the one playing in the water. The one I'm following now, there are all kinds of little sandpipers. This little sandpiper is a sanderling. A lot of cute little, oh look at that one. A lot of cute little birds out on the beaches, trying to get all those little animals that might be washed up in the waves, the coquina shells, any kind of carcasses that might wash up. These guys are nature's little cleaners, and they just run from you and the waves. Next birds, we got some laughing gulls, and those little guys with the black crest on the back of their head, those are lesser terns. Some people call them sandwich terns, which I didn't learn until I actually moved down to Florida. There's 3 kinds of terns in Florida that I'm familiar with. That's the royal tern, they're the largest, then the lesser tern, which are these guys, and then sandwich terns, which are the same thing as the lesser terns from what I understand. And then there are the least terns, which are about the size of your palm. They're absolutely adorable. The next ones we can see real close in this big grouping. This was right before a storm. Notice the ones with the real dark black wings. These are black skimmers. These are a crepuscular bird that come out right as the sun is setting and then a little while after. They have an underbite with their bill so they can just skim the surface of the water, picking up any kind of little floating debris that might be edible. They'll get fish. They'll get just about anything they can fit in their mouth that might be healthy for them, hopefully healthy. But you can see this north end of the island, all these birds were kind of getting ready to bunker down for a storm coming, and you can notice they're all turning into the wind, probably where they get the name for the terns. Royal terns, which we have here with the yellow bills. This was just after breeding season for the royal terns. You also see the lesser terns there, along with some juvenile gulls, crested gulls and laughing gulls. Here, this little tern going from one tern to another. I noticed that it wasn't just going to 2, and the reason I say that is 2 would be the parents. There's 2 parents, and that means that this little tern was going to everyone that it could to try to get some food. Will you feed me? How about you? It bothered this one for a while, so I'm guessing this one probably was one of its parents. And you can see around the whole roost, the whole colony, there's a whole bunch of them. Got a little too close there, but I wanted to get a good audio. Hear him calling? These terns are excellent hunters. They will dive deep down into the water and usually come up with a fish. They use those spear-like bills to dive down in and makes them very hydrodynamic, so they can just grab the fish and then fly off with it. You'll see oftentimes these all sitting on different pilings around the area, and they'll fight for their little seat as long as they can. Another little sanderling walking around. How cool. It is really neat to see all these animals kind of hanging out together. I did happen to find a couple of the birds were affected by some of the red tide poisoning and the red tide algae that was in the water during this time. And I took them all to the local animal hospital, and they were released very shortly after. There's that little hungry baby again. Feed, feed, feed me. Feed, feed, feed me. That's all I could hear when it was chirping. Very cute. That little lesser tern back there, he just doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't want any part of these royal terns. Cool stretch. Oh, look at that. Here's another last look at those black skimmers. Beautiful birds. I wish I could have got some of them in flight, but the camera just would not pick up any because it was so dark, and it's really, really hard to see these. Kind of got to be in the right place at the right time. See how windy it was, though, and that's why a lot of these birds are just resting and hanging out. Quick shout out to my friends at Pink Shell, and I hope everyone enjoyed my video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please like and